This is not it. If that's what you need, go to AWS or to Azure or to Google, right? Go to Linode. I think it's an excellent choice. This to me would be a deal breaker. Is it good? Should you use it? Should you not use it? Cloud computing helps with a lot of issues, and I will not go into all the benefits. You know all that stuff. You know why we are moving towards cloud computing. Instead, I will focus on 3 key aspects that might drive you towards choosing one provider over the other. To be more precise, 3 key questions that you should be asking yourself. Is a specific cloud vendor or a solution or a service meeting your needs? Does it fit into your budget? And will it meet your future needs? Sure, you can switch from one provider to another, but that's usually not as simple as it should be. Actually, with the emergence of Kubernetes and all of us switching to Kubernetes, changing providers is not that hard anymore. Nevertheless, the ability to predict whether a vendor provides everything you will need not only today, but in the future is an important one as well. So in this video, I will explore Linode as a potential solution for your cloud computing needs. So who are the competitors? With whom is Linode competing to grab the attention of users? That would be on one hand DigitalOcean and Vultr and a few others. And on the other hand, big guys like AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, Alibaba, and so on and so forth. I will not really do a deep comparison between Linode and all the others. If you want me to do that, I can. Just ask me in the comments. Instead, I will focus on the benefits, the pros and cons of using Linode, and then you can use that information to make a decision. Is Linode a good choice or not a good choice? Or, as I said before, you want a comparison, but then you need to tell me that. So we're going to explore Linode as a potential choice for your cloud computing needs in 20 minutes or less. So let's go to linode.com, and typically you would register and sign in and give them your credit card, do whatever you need to do to register. I'm not going to go through that. You know how to register. Let's skip that and go to the important part. Now, if you look at the left side, the menu over here, you basically see more or less everything that Linode offers. And that can cause 2 types of reactions, at least in my head, two types of reactions pop immediately. And that is, hey, it's only that, they have only that. Or it could be, hey, finally somebody gives me what cloud computing needs and not everybody that anybody could ever imagine, right? It really depends what you need. If you're a Fortune 100 company, like, thousands of employees, then you might need tens or hundreds or thousands of services that AWS offers. This is not it. If that's what you need, go to AWS or to Azure or to Google, right? This is not it. This is about pure cloud computing. And pure cloud computing is basically the need to get virtual machines. That's what you really, truly, truly, truly need when you go to cloud, right? Everything else is almost like a bonus or not. Depends really how you look at it. And those needs, I need to repeat that again, is basically cloud computing. I want to be sure that I can get my VMs in the service, and as an additional bonus, whether I can let Linode folks manage my Kubernetes cluster and everything else we need for that Kubernetes cluster. But before I proceed, before I go into Kubernetes and why we are going to do some test run using Kubernetes, the reason is relatively simple. Because everybody likes Kubernetes, everybody is using Kubernetes or will be using Kubernetes, but more importantly is because it is so much of table stakes right now, Kubernetes, that absolutely every cloud provider has Kubernetes, right? Not every cloud provider has machine learning, not every cloud provider has everything, but Kubernetes as a service is basically a common denominator across all cloud vendors right now. Kubernetes allows us to validate very quickly all the important features of cloud vendor because Kubernetes requires virtual machines, compute, it requires a load balancer, it cannot work without storage, and a few other critical important things, right? So let's see how does Kubernetes work in Linode as a general test of how Linode works itself. Let's do a create cluster very quickly and see what we're gonna get. Create cluster. What am I gonna call this cluster? I don't know. Like let's say DevOps toolkit, like the channel region, right? Typical things. Why not? I don't know, Newark, doesn't matter. And Kubernetes version, I'm going to take second newest, because later on I might want to check how it works with upgrades. And then we select which nodes do we want to have. And okay, here we are. And I don't know, I'm going to choose the smallest one, 3 of the smallest ones. Now, the first thing that you will observe, let me edit actually. Now, one of the things that I absolutely love over here is that I see the price. Hey, this will be $30 a month. None of the big providers gives me this information. If you go to AWS or Azure or Google and you create a cluster, you will not know how much it will cost. You will not know how much it will cost before you create it, while you're creating it, after you create it, because the cost is a combination of many factors. Like, it's not only about VMs or how much you pay for control plane, it's also about the traffic, how much traffic you have, how much storage you have, how many bangs and whistles. A lot of things influence the price in big providers, and you will never know how much it will cost in advance. Here is different. It's $30 per month, or whatever you choose to have. You know the exact cost up to a penny of what you're going to pay for at the end of the month by simply looking at the information right away. Now, if we switch to negative observations about what we see on screen right now, is that there are no zones. So I have a regional cluster over here, but that is actually more similar to what you would call a zone. Basically, it is a single data center. You cannot spread your cluster across multiple data centers. There are no multiple zones within a region, and if you would even try to run a cluster across multiple regions, that would be disastrous because of the latency and what's not. But is that important? Maybe. And let's keep that for the end of the video discussion, and then we're gonna go through pros and cons. Let's now first see what it really does. It's almost finished. This is one of the things I love about Linode. It's almost finished. It took, I did not measure time, but probably around 2 minutes, give or take, to create a cluster. And now all the nodes that I created are running. So control plane is there, nodes are there. The first great, amazing, positive observation, actually second, the first one was price, is the speed. It's lightning fast. It's faster than anything I've seen in AWS, Azure, Alibaba, and what else is Google Cloud. Now, how fast it is or not compared to similar services like DigitalOcean, we might explore in a different video. But compared to big guys, it's lightning fast. Now, I have a Kubernetes cluster. It will be logical that I try it out. So I'm going to copy the config, kubeconfig, and I'm going to switch to my terminal. So here I am. I will export kubeconfig variable to be whatever is my current directory, and then kubeconfig.yaml. I will open that file in an editor like kubeconfig. There we are, and paste the configuration. Right now I have the configuration for my Kubernetes cluster, and I can validate whether it really works. kubectl get nodes, for example. Right, and go, there we are. 3 nodes, because that's how much I requested, are there. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention, so let me go back to the UI just very quickly to show you something that might be a deal breaker or not. Again, depends on what you're looking for, really. Over here, there is no option to create cluster autoscaler, right? You might be able to make it work, or you might not be. It's a mystery, but it's not provided as part of the service. And that's potentially a problem. Without autoscaler, your cluster is basically static. You would need to increase or decrease the number of nodes that you need. And that probably means that you will make it to run at the maximum capacity, just in case, to always have more than what you need, which is a bit problematic. But on the other hand, the price, it's extremely cheap. It's very, very cheap, extremely cheap. So you can allow yourself to have a few nodes more than what you truly need. Another thing that I'm not very fond of is that when I look at the nodes, I see running. But that is very misleading. Running means that virtual machines are running, not necessarily that they are connected to the Kubernetes cluster, that they're operational, that they're healthy, and all those things. It would be great if I could see the health status, just like the ones here, status that says ready. if I could see the status that I see from kubectl in the UI, that would be absolutely awesome. Assuming that you're using the UI, maybe you're not, and then it doesn't matter. Like, I don't use UIs, I dislike UIs. But anyways, if you're a UI person, knowing the status would be also awesome. Now, if you want to upgrade your cluster, it's relatively easy. Actually, it's easy to upgrade cluster almost anywhere. The only exception might be AWS, but I'm not going to go into trashing AWS right now. So if you want to upgrade the cluster, you just click upgrade cluster, and it tells you that, hey, yes, you can upgrade to 1.19. You need to press recycle all nodes, which is a very, very strange way to say that it will do rolling updates. So we will see now. Actually, let me go back to my terminal. It's easier to watch from here. So I'm going to go watch kubectl get nodes, and then you will see how one node was removed. So Linode is doing the right thing in this case. Unlike AWS, AWS is basically creating a completely new node group and then destroying your old node group. It's not doing rolling updates. Linode is doing rolling updates, so that's very positive. Now, the ordering, the way how it's doing rolling updates is a bit weird. It should create a new node and then destroy one of the existing nodes. It is doing the other way around. It shuts down one of the nodes and then creates a new one. So it's a bit inverse order, but nevertheless, doing rolling updates, amazing, great. I'm surprised that not everybody does that, AWS. So this will take a while, so I will probably fast forward to the end of the process. I might give you some music kind of to listen to. I'm not sure. Anyway, fast forwarding to the end. As a side note, I will use this opportunity to reference something I did in the past. I had a video that compares the speed of AWS, Azure, and Google and Linode, and I disqualified Linode because it cannot upgrade the cluster. It destroys it, and then it creates a completely new cluster. And that was completely unacceptable. So I disqualified Linode in that video. And the link to the video is above my head. You might want to watch it. Anyway, this is now working, at least from Web UI. So you can upgrade the cluster now. You couldn't upgrade it in the past. Now, we are yet to see whether that works through other mechanisms, but we're going to get there, right? Whatever I said in the video that measures the speed, you can discard it because obviously now Linode can upgrade itself, can upgrade Kubernetes cluster instead of shutting it down and creating a completely new one. Unacceptable. Anyway, now that's fixed, at least from the Web UI. We are going yet to see whether that works through other means, but we're going to get there. And there we are. The cluster is up and running. It was upgraded from version 1.18 to 1.19. Everything is peachy. Everything is amazing. And before we got to the more interesting, at least personally more interesting part of Linode or tests related to Linode, let's destroy this cluster and see how that works. You need to go to the list of clusters. Here we are, and then say delete. And that's about it. I mean, it's not that about it. I need to type the name, DevOps Toolkit. Toolkit. And click the delete button, and that's it. It's gone as if it never existed. Now, let's go into the important stuff, and that is how can we manage our cluster without going through the UI. Now, for many of you, I imagine that many Linode users are fine using the UI. Probably smaller companies, smaller shops, smaller teams, what's not, maybe some startups, right? For you, it might be okay to do it through UI, but once you get serious, you understand the need to do it through infrastructure as code. So we're going to see how it can work with infrastructure as code, and we are going to choose the most popular, the most commonly used infrastructure as code tool, and you know which one it is? You probably do. That's Terraform, right? So let's see whether Linode works with Terraform and how does it work with Terraform. I already have a repository with all the code, all the Terraform manifests that we might need, and the commands that I will execute are in the gist. So you can just find it in the description. The gist is over there, right? Among other things, how to clone the repo and what's not. Now I'm going to go to the repository where I have that, which is DevOps catalog code, I think, and then Terraform LKE, I think. Yes, here. This is where I put it. Now, the first step is to do Terraform init, right, initialize it, it will download the dependencies and what's not. Now let me show you the definition. Cut main, this is where it is. It's relatively straightforward, nothing really fancy. Linode is very simple. That's a huge thing, right? It is defining which providers are required, which is Linode. Defines that provider, it uses the token, so I need to specify the token as a variable or environment variable, what's not. And then there is a cluster here with a few arguments, nothing really special. And the rest of this are my shenanigans where I create kubeconfig automatically from Terraform, and I potentially install Nginx ingress. But that's really not important. What matters is that defining a cluster is extremely easy simply because Linode is easy, and then that easiness reflects in Terraform definitions as well. So I will define a few variables, which is export tf var token, no, underscore token. I will not show you what my token is because I don't trust you that much, so I will actually load it from the file. Just remember that I'm loading from a source file the same token that you should define, and I'm going to export tf var k8s version because that's yet another variable that I'm using, and I'm going to create Kubernetes based on 1.18. And then Terraform apply, right? Let's see whether it works with Terraform and how it works and what's not, right? Typical Terraform stuff shows me what will be created. I'm going to say yes because I'm brave, and then I'm going to wait. And this is where, again, I must stress one of the huge things about Linode. Apart from simplicity, simplicity is a big deal for me on Linode. The pricing, knowing the prices in advance and being cheap is another, and the third one is speed. And this would mean that it should create a cluster in kind of a couple of minutes only. That's how long it should take. So let's fast forward to the end of the process and see how long it took. Actually, I will use this opportunity to stress something very, very important. And that's that UIs are good if you're learning, if you don't know what you're doing, but you don't want to use UIs for your operations. You want to define what you want to have as code. And in this case, it's YAML or no, it's Terraform. So it's HCL, store it in Git, and do the dance, do the right thing. Meaning don't operate your clusters, no matter whether it's Linode or AWS or DigitalOcean or something else, by clicking buttons. That's not a good idea. Unless those buttons are pushing changes to your Git repository, then it's okay. But almost no UIs ever do that. So I'm trying to gain a bit of time. Okay, there we go. It's finished. It's working, and it generated a kubeconfig for me, so I can export kubeconfig equals pwd, d meaning current directory, and then there we are. Now let's see the nodes, kubectl get nodes. And what do we have? Do we have nodes? Is it running? Yes, only two nodes are here. Now this shows a bit of discrepancy, right? When Linode tells you that the cluster is created, what it really tells you is that control plane, Kubernetes control plane was created and that nodes were created. But it doesn't really track, doesn't really tell you whether those nodes were provisioned, whether they're connected to the control plane, and so on and so forth. So basically, from Linode perspective, the process is finished, no matter whether you do it from UI or from Terraform, when the nodes are created, not when they are working as part of the cluster, not when they are provisioned, connected to control plane, and so on and so forth. And you can see that if I do get nodes again, now I get 3 nodes, now they're all running, right? So it's a bit premature when it says I'm finished, which is okay, because you can already start using it and Kubernetes will provision and decide where to put pods when nodes are available. And now comes the big moment, and I'm saying big because I know what will happen and you don't, or you might not. So I'm going to try to upgrade to a newer version of Kubernetes. So tf var k8s and then version equals 1.19, right? And execute Terraform apply again. And then let's see what will happen. Let's take a look. And here we are, right? It will forces replacement. The whole cluster will be replaced. So the ability to do rolling updates, to update your cluster directly from UI is not the same as from Terraform. In UI, you're doing rolling updates, which is the correct way to do it. From Terraform, it is not doing rolling updates. It will destroy your cluster. Do never update Linode, at least not never. Right now, today, which is early February 2021, do not update your cluster, upgrade your cluster with Terraform. And that means that you shouldn't be using Terraform to manage your cluster in Linode at all. Now, this to me would be a deal breaker. Hey, if I cannot use Terraform, I'm not going to use Linode, and because I want to manage everything as code. Let's put it like that. And I cannot use Terraform if it will destroy the cluster every time I want to upgrade it. Now, there is good news. And that's that I was in contact with folks at Linode, and they assured me that the update to Terraform modules are coming, and that the next update will fix this problem. In the next update, you will be able to upgrade your Linode Kubernetes cluster, or LKE, without really destroying the cluster, doing rolling updates. So that's a promise, and I'm repeating the promise now publicly. So by the time you watch this, this should probably work. It will probably not destroy your cluster, hopefully. Now let's see whether they fulfill their promise. If they fulfill their promise, then everything is peachy. Until that happens, either use UI or don't use Linode for Kubernetes, because it doesn't do rolling updates, at least Terraform modules. But again, they promised, so let's keep them for the word. Now, I will not create a cluster, you know what will happen. Instead, I will just destroy the cluster, Terraform destroy, and we are going to discuss what we learned about Linode, what are the pros, what are the cons, whether you should use it, and if you should, in which circumstances you might want to use Linode. Or more importantly, what do I think about it? That's coming next. What does Victor think about Linode? Is it good? Should you use it? Should you not use it? And it's hard to answer that question because it really depends on who you are. So instead of telling you, yeah, use it or don't, I'm going to tell you what I think about it and under which conditions it might be useful for me or for others. I love how simple it is. To be honest, I'm sick of the complexity we have in big providers like AWS and Google and Azure. I think it's too complex, not only for inexperienced, but even for experienced users. Now, in some cases, that complexity makes sense because you might be leveraging it to its fullness. You might be doing a lot of different complicated stuff in AWS or wherever else. But simple is better. Complex is bad if it's not necessary. So the real question is, do you need the complexity behind big cloud providers? If you don't, then something like Linode might be a very good choice. It's simple, it's straightforward, you don't have to spend months trying to figure it out. You just go there and you use it, and that's it. Another thing that is absolutely awesome is the pricing. It's not only that it's cheap, it's very cheap, so that's always great. Cheaper is better than more expensive if it gives you the same value. You know the price in advance, you know how much something will cost. When you go somewhere else, like again, AWS, Azure, Google, you have no idea how expensive or cheap something is. You don't know how much it will cost until the bill comes. So I really like knowing the price in advance, especially when that price is very, very low. Another big thing is that it is fast. It is one of the fastest, if not the fastest, cloud computing service I've seen. It's amazing. It's really impressive how fast it is. But there are bad things in Linode as well. It is not really scalable. My Kubernetes cluster in Linode doesn't scale automatically, at least not without me putting a lot of effort, but that defies the purpose of using Kubernetes as a service. I would really like to see cluster auto-scaling being available out of the box, some checkbox or maybe some argument in Terraform. It is not resilient. If their region goes down, I will go down with it as well, because Linode regions are single zone regions, basically single data center. Another thing I'm not really fond of, at least within a context of Kubernetes, is that the nodes that are used as worker nodes in my Kubernetes cluster are really treated as normal nodes. I do not see the status, I do not know whether the nodes are healthy or not, whether they're connected to the cluster, to the control plane actually, and so on and so forth. So maybe putting some Kubernetes specific information over there would be very useful, I believe. I have a feeling that Linode is treating nodes in Kubernetes cluster as any other nodes, which is a bit problematic potentially. There are other things that I might be missing, like container image registry would be nice addition. Some better way to do logging, maybe integration with Prometheus or Grafana or something outside of whatever they cooked there themselves, and so on and so forth. I can come up with like Istio, for example. Maybe Istio or Linkerd should be installed by default or have a checkbox and so on and so forth. But that might be misleading because I can get all those services from other places. I could go to Grafana Labs to get their products like Prometheus and Grafana and whatever else. I can install it myself. I could go to JFrog Cloud maybe to get container image registry or use Docker Hub and so on and so forth. So it's really hard to say what I'm missing and what I'm not missing because realistically, most of the things that I'm missing, I can get somewhere else. So the real question is whether I want those things that are missing, let's say it's missing services, to be available as part of Linode, or I should go somewhere else. I think that those missing things should not be part of Linode, which might be a bit contradictory. And the reason why I believe that Linode shouldn't expand its portfolio with more services, because the more Linode expands and adds additional services, the more it would be like AWS. And the reason why I might be using Linode instead of, let's say, AWS is that simplicity and the speed and all the things that come from being very focused on specific services, and those specific services are really compute. I want cloud computing from Linode. If I want dozens or hundreds of services, I will most likely not go to Linode. So adding additional services over there might be a negative thing for me because it would necessarily increase the complexity, potentially the cost. Maybe it would slow it down and so on and so forth. So let me explain it in different words. If you need a bunch of services, all of them provided by a single vendor, don't go to Linode, go to Microsoft and AWS and Google and Alibaba and whomever, right? If you want everything to be in hands of a single provider, Linode is not your thing, right? Now, if you want to use Linode as a cloud computing provider and to pick and choose for the other services you might need some other providers or maybe to run them yourself, then it's an excellent choice because the price is right, it's extremely cheap, it's extremely fast, and it's simple. My brain has problems to comprehend complicated things. I like when it's simple. Actually, it's not that my brain has a problem to comprehend complicated things, but that it doesn't like dealing with unnecessary complexity. So you want simple, you want cheap, you want to know the price in advance, you want fast, and you don't need the services that you don't need. You just want a cloud computing provider with potentially managed Kubernetes cluster that provides what you need, but not more. And by what you mean, I mean what you really, really need for cloud computing, and that's storage, networking, virtual machines, and only a few more things. That's about it. That's what cloud computing is. Everything else is SaaS. And if that's what you need, go to Linode. I think it's an excellent choice. And before I leave, before we close this down, a quick note. First of all, if you want me to compare it with DigitalOcean, Vultr, or maybe AWS, whatever you want, let me know in the comments. I don't promise that I will do it soon, but I promise that I will go through it sooner or later. And before I say goodbye, do the usual things. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Click the like button, bell, all the jingles and bells and whistles. Do the stuff you normally do when you like the video, and I hope that you liked this one. Thank you so much. See you next time. Cheers.